This episode presents an update to what is happening on international plastics governance. Amila from IGES shared the latest updates on the International Negotiations Committee that was formed last year to define a future legally binding instrument to curb plastic pollution. He also explained the life cycle approach and shared details and challenges around the need to account for the full life cycle of plastics and its proposed alternatives. We also heard some examples of the work he and his colleagues are doing to help build the needed capacity at local levels to measure plastic pollution and to be able to take steps to reduce it. Join us and listen to this episode. Last time we talked to you, Amila, the international community, that was early this year, the international community had just agreed on a process to define a governance instrument for dealing with plastic pollution. One of the decisions that came out of that event was to set up an INC. Just wondering what has happened since then. I mean, that's almost a year ago.
UNIA 5.2 took place in, February, end of February to early March this year. And the important thing happened there is there was it closed the circle on discussion on marine litter and plastic pollution, and they proposed the resolution, so which is called international legally binding instrument. So after the UNIA 5.2, the process is initiated to achieve that international legally binding instrument. So that, as you mentioned, that process proposed INC plus open-ended working groups activities. So from UNIA 5.2 to now, so there was first open-ended working group happened. Then the first INC also happened. Yeah.
So can you describe what the open-ended working groups are? I mean, how are they related as well to the INC?
After UNIA 5.2, so the objective was to achieve that international legally binding instrument. However, the process and whom to involve, so certain things were not very clear, and especially the timeline as well. So the OEWG happened hosted by the government of Senegal from 29th May to June, 1st of June. So there are the two main objectives. The first one was the rules and procedures governing the INCs. And the second one was the INC's meeting schedule. However, at that open-ended working group, the meeting schedule was established. It was agreed by the parties. However, the rules and procedures was not concluded or not decided. There was some discussion. However, the final conclusion was not made. So they forwarded that negotiation to the INC 1.
And when you say, Amila, when you say they, like it's open-ended, like who are they, the people that constitute this open-ended working group?
Yeah, so there were mainly governments, including EU, plus EU, and then there were scientists, NGOs, and international organizations, regional organizations. So they were there for the discussion in that open-ended working group.
Okay, and then for the INC itself, are these just state representatives, or who is actually in the intergovernmental negotiating
maybe the same people?
committee?
But open-ended group working group was a little bit not so confirmed. But in the INC, we can precisely say there are 4 types of groups. So as I mentioned previously, the number one, the first one is states plus European Union. So the INC one, there were about 170 states were there. And then the intergovernmental organizations. such as ADB, Asian Development Bank, OECD, so kind of international organizations. So there were 9 such kind of organizations. And then specialized agencies and related organizations, for example, Food and Agriculture Organization, International Labour Organization, World Bank, WHO, World Trade Organization. So such kind of organizations. So there were 8 specialized agencies at INC1. And then the other category, another one is UN system. So UNEP and other UN organizations. And then the last one is NGOs and also IGES, like our organization, and organizations like WWF. So were representing, were participating this process.
Is it correct to think of it in that way, that the open-ended working group were some of those interest groups and government delegates got together to define what the INC should be doing, and once everybody had agreed on what functions the INC should take and where it should meet, then it went into the actual sort of mandate of the INC, which is to try to start negotiations around this instrument, right?
Yeah, and also like one thing I experienced is it's not so easy to agree at the beginning because nobody is sure what we are going to achieve. So that's also uncertain thing. So, but we know, like, we need to come up with some kind of internationally legally binding instrument. But instrument can be what kind of instrument, also a question. And so, since this is a ongoing process, so it's difficult. I believe it's not so easy to agree the process at the beginning. So that's what I also experienced during INC1. Okay, so that's why the time frame may be okay. It's some certain states and can say let's have the INC3. We can support. We can kind of thing. So time frame fixing can be quite agreeable. However, the process is I think still for me it's not 100% clear at the moment. Yeah.
I guess in such a democratic process, first an important task in the beginning is to actually listen to the inputs from different stakeholders, to hear what it is that they have to say and what they prioritize and expect as an outcome.
Yeah, sure.
Right. And setting the boundaries, right, of, the discussion, perhaps, because plastic pollution to me feels like, such an impossible task, right?
Yeah, of course, because plastic has 2 sides. So it's a useful side and the pollution side. So, and so many stakeholders involved. So, yeah, so things make so interesting and complicated. However, if I think the process which happened during INC1, so first I think they need to elect the officers to conduct the process. So first they elected the chair. So this time it's Peru become the chair. And then after the INC3, so it will be transferred to the Ecuador. So Peru and Ecuador will be chairing INCs during the process. So that's number one, which confirmed. And then discussion of the organizational matters, like the rules and procedures, and also the adaptation of the agenda and the organization work, how to proceed things. So it's it discussed, but not. I believe, to my understanding, it was not completely finalized. I would like to add something like it was not only focusing on procedural things because there was some parallel discussion on the preparation of the ILBI, so internationally legally binding instrument as well. So that was also happened. So there were 5 types of participant types. So there were scientists and other stakeholders as well. So they also time to time bring the topics of the complexity of such kind of binding instrument and also what kind of aspects need to be discussed. So such kind of discussion was also there. So yeah.
Understood. So you just mentioned that the chair was elected, and there will be, like, I guess, several of these INC meetings, I assume, right? Going towards the agreement of the what was it called? The legally binding instrument.
ILBI.
Right? So
ILBI.
Yes, that's right. New acronym. So if that's the case, what kind of timeline are we talking about here? Is it like in 2 years? Is it like in 5 years? Like
so
what?
That's
what are
a very good
here?
question. So there were 5 INCs planned. So INC 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So the first one we know recently happened, and the last one, INC 5, is planned to be end of 2024. And in between, after the INC 3, so there will be UNIA 6 in February 2024, so early 2024. And then there is a proposed diplomatic conference of participants. So it will happen in mid 2025. So my understanding is this process will maybe expected to conclude around mid of 2025.
Right. Okay. As you're saying, Amila, as you mentioned earlier, the whole thing about an internationally legally binding instrument on marine litter and plastic pollution is a gravely complicated affair. Can you tell us, what are some of the things that are currently being discussed on how we should begin to understand how marine litter and plastic pollution can be governed? What are the proposals?
Yeah, so that INC one discussion, so they were related to ILBI. So there were few what I observed, few key points. So one is the potential ILBI elements, the obligations, control measures, and voluntary approaches, and national action plans. So I think IGES also involving a lot of national action plans as well. So it catch my attention. So that was one key area, key point I got my attention. And then how to implement, the means of implementation, which includes capacity building, technical assistance, and the finance. So that was also very interesting topic. So a lot of developing nations discuss about this as well, because the capacity, so the at the moment, so there is certain gaps, and we need to address that, and also how to implement it, and technical assistance, what kind of technical assistance each region or each nation need, and especially a lot of discussion on the finance as well. And then another important one is the monitoring and evaluation. That's also very important. How successful or how the implementation of the activities. So that was also discussed. Plus the scientific and technical cooperation. So which kind of research and awareness raising is needed, and how evidence-based policy should be integrated, whether there is sufficient evidence at the moment, or do we have to do we need to wait until we get how much evidence is enough, kind of thing was also there.
Right.
And also, like I think if we go with the IPCC and IGES kind of scientific platform, so that was also in discussion. So which kind of scientific platform should be there to support the ILBI?
Oh, so there's a discussion about whether they might make like a plastics version of like the IPCC or IPBES, which is, for climate change and biodiversity, respectively.
It was not a very mature discussion, but like a early stage of discussion. So which kind of thing should be there? So there were no conclusions at the moment.
So it sounds like
Interesting.
The all very important but still diffuse elements are necessary to be discussed as ingredients for such a legally binding instrument, as you mentioned. Like what are some possible obligations of countries, and what are control measures? But on the other side, what are some voluntary measures? And then very much related also to, I think, to IGES's work and to your own scientific work, Amila, is the things that you mentioned, like capacity building. Like, what's the capacity out there in order to figure out how much plastic a sector or a country produces and where it comes from, where it goes, and what assistance is needed if that capacity isn't there? I mean, how do we begin to understand what support is needed, from countries, and what are some tools that we can use in order to take a look at how this plastic moves through our lives? Amila, what are some of the things that you are working on there?
Yeah, I think that's a very, very good question, Simon. So we know like a plastic is not just a plastic polymer. It's a very complex contaminant suit. It can be in the environment, and also it's a complex composite material often, because the plastic is not just plastic. We need certain properties when we use for certain products. So we can add, we need not the manufacturers add plasticizers or like a colorants kind of additives. Like there is evidence that and there is reportings more than 10,000 chemicals associated with plastics, and about 2,000 chemicals are human toxic, can be human toxic, and ecotoxicity creating things. So then it's a really challenge whether how we can recognize certain chemicals are there in the plastic, and how we can monitor, how we can standardize. Even like, for example, one of our example is in Sri Lanka. So they wanted to ban single-use plastic bags and introduce bioplastics, so PLA-based plastics. But Sri Lanka doesn't have a facility to analyze the PLA composition of the bioplastics. So then even though they put the policy measures, they cannot monitor whether they are actually importing PLA or another material kind of thing. So that's one classic example. Like there can be more severe things, which kind of chemicals, toxic chemicals can be there. So if we put certain import or certain transboundary movement related things, then we should exactly get to know the developing countries or the other countries have capacity to monitor and implementing such kind of system. So that's one key point we realized, and we are working on some sort of capacity building activities. Especially a few months ago, we published two training need assessment reports on microplastics, one for Sri Lanka and one for Vietnam. So we assessed the capacity within the country and what kind of training and instrument like facilities they need for the monitoring and evidence-based policy making approach. So that was quite a good experience. We were also learning during the activities, and now we are trying to support the countries. And also, like another point, I think Simon mentioned the spatial and temporal and that complexity of the plastics. So it's quite a challenge. What kind of approach? Is there any kind of approach we can decide to move away or bringing policies to phase out or certain things for plastics? So that's a very good point. Maybe we can further discuss.
It's a really good example. Thank you for explaining that, Amila, because it goes to show that on the one side we have the challenge of the international community of policymakers or all these stakeholders that you mentioned in the beginning, that they have to be able to get together and negotiate the details of an agreement. But at the same time, there has to be all this other preparatory work ongoing to try to make sure that the capacities needed to take action on that agreement are there. And I guess as your stories show, currently at least, the capacities aren't really there. And so the work that you're doing is really important to bring about or improve those capacities. Yeah. As you said, your example of work in Vietnam and Sri Lanka, and maybe you can tell us about certain approaches that are necessary to understand this, how we are treating plastics.
Yeah. So I mean, like first, I will try to address your first part of the question. So I think it's a very interesting point, like chicken and egg kind of situation, which came first. Okay, so. In this case, we don't have capacity or we don't have enough data to take decisions. And then without decision, we cannot improve the capacity and data. So kind of thing. So it's a quite very interesting situation. So that was also discussed at INC. Like a lot of scientists bring, like there are two different sides. So we need to delay the process until we develop the capacity or until we develop enough evidence, and the other side, how long we need to wait and how much certainty we need to the science. So that's also we need to decide. So such kind of discussion and debate was also there. And if we go to the point that Vietnam and Sri Lanka situation, our experience, like there are ongoing activities at the moment, a lot of activities in the region, like National Action Plan preparation, city plastic marine litter action plan preparation, and I think that's very positive. So first the countries think how they should approach. And then cities also decide these are our strength and these are the opportunities and these are the bad side of plastics and how we can use it for like such kind of communication. And plus that international level. So I believe these three things can move forward in parallel. Like for example, if we think about first international one should come, then national. If we think then how these country delegates can discuss without much practical understanding and knowledge, how they can decide to agree into an international agreement. Okay, so since they're working on it, then when you prepare the national action plans, so they need to bring the local and regional within their country people. So if they have no experience on the issue and how to work with many stakeholders, so they cannot provide, it's very difficult to provide productive inputs to the national action plan. Okay, so I think it's all three processes, all three stages should move forward in parallel. People go to the international negotiation and come back and give the inputs to the national level and the local level, and then they bring information and go back to the next INC. So such thing is very important. And also the important thing is those two countries, why we initiated that capacity building need assessment, because Ministry of Water Supply in Sri Lanka, so they realize a new pollutant, emerging pollutant called microplastic can be a threat in the environment. So they come to us and did the request. Similarly, VC from Vietnam also did a similar request because they received some equipment from Japanese government. However, they want to use it effectively to build the capacity within the country and engage those equipment and resources into the monitoring program. So they found they have some limitation on training their staff kind of thing. So then they approached us.
Amila, can you tell us about the meaning of full life cycle impacts of plastics and alternatives?
Yeah.
What does that mean in the context of how we need to understand how we should deal with plastic pollution?
I think since UNIA 5.2, the term full life cycle impacts of plastics and alternatives was highlighted at the UNIA 5.2, and it spread globally across all the stakeholders. So I'm from a life cycle LCA discipline, so background. I didn't hear that much attention from other scientists before UNIA 5.2. So once the UNIA 5.2 comes, so many scientists try to build communication with LCA researchers as well to understand and to produce a meaningful discussion on full life cycle approach. The number one is let's try to roughly understand what we need to achieve. So that international ILBI focusing on sustainable solutions to address plastic pollution and marine litter issue. So then the solution should be sustainable. Plastic is a kind of a commodity, so we are using it for our day-to-day life. So that's one side. The other side is pollution side. Then if we just because of pollution, if we just get rid of plastics, so what kind of other impacts can be there? So there will be. So then when we want to achieve the pollution reduction in sustainable way, then we need to consider the whole life cycle of the plastics. For example, LCA is a tool often used to quantify the environmental sustainability, covering the full life cycle of a particular product or technological system. In this case, it's plastics. Not only plastics, plastics and alternatives to the plastics. And also in this case, not only the different life cycle stages, we consider the wide range of environmental impacts. Like if we just consider plastic as an emerging pollutant and try to address that, we may be shifting the burden to another component, another impact category. For example, like if you think about different impact categories, it can be climate change, water scarcity, or maybe biodiversity loss, land degradation, using valuable resources. So there are such kind of impact categories. There are I mentioned few, so there are so many. So like if we just try to address plastic related like appearance of like a presence of microplastic or such kind of pollution impact category, then maybe we are shifting the burden from such kind of pollution to climate change pollution. Okay, so that's why we need to consider about full life cycle. On one hand, shifting from one life cycle phase to stage to another life cycle stage. The other one is shifting from one type of impact category to another type of impact category.
Let me just try to make sure that I got your explanation right. So, for example, if you say plastic and alternatives or different stages of the life cycle, for someone who's not an expert or on plastics, that could, for example, be if we chose to get rid of plastics and instead we use a type of wood, bamboo or something else, and that would create a huge demand in the production of that alternative product, which could compromise, that could cause deforestation or other impacts. So what you're saying is very thoroughly to consider also the impacts of the alternatives if an alternative is produced. And similarly, if instead of causing microplastic pollution in the oceans, we could avoid that by just burning the plastic, I suppose. But if we burn the plastic, we have another problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, Simon and Erin, yes, exactly. So, like you mentioned, that's why INC, so that the process suggests the consideration of full life cycle impacts of plastics and alternatives. So, like you precisely mentioned, I think we already have a very good example. That's the biofuel. Of course, introducing biofuel. So we can reduce the direct emissions, direct carbon dioxide or direct climate pollutant emissions. However, there is increase of indirect because the land degradation, we need to deforest and grow. So land degradation kind of related indirect emissions increase. Plus, there can be more nitrogen oxides, NOx, and also there can be, because of deforestation and growing same type of plant, there can be biodiversity loss and maybe food scarcity, creating human health impacts. So that's a classical example. Classic example of is that biofuel example. So similarly, like Simon mentioned, plastic and nature-based alternative product can be different climate impact, like different impact categories. Like, of course, plastic related direct pollution can be minimized by introducing bamboo product or something. However, because of deforestation, there can be indirect climate pollutants plus biodiversity loss kind of things. So that's why we need to assess the full life cycle impacts, considering as much as possible impact categories.
So, this is just maybe a more general question about LCAs, but I'm just wondering, like you just mentioned that there are some direct impacts and like a myriad of, indirect impacts, right? So how far do you have to go really to assess
that's
everything?
Very good question.
Right?
So if we go for LCA, so we have something called life cycle inventory. And life cycle impact assessment models.
Okay.
So there are different models developed by different groups. So that's one side. And life cycle inventory also a very important category. So usually, like when we develop a life cycle inventory, based on availability of data, we can as much as going deeper is more important. Like, for example, let's say plastic pellet. So let's say 1 kilogram of certain polymer plastic pellet production. So if you think about how much energy, number one is to produce 1 kilo of plastic raw material, how much energy we need. If we can include that kind of precise data, so then we can get more accurate results. But unfortunately, always we don't have. Sometimes we have such details, but sometimes we don't have. So that's a kind of another challenge.
I'd like you to just re-emphasize about life cycle LCA, life cycle assessment, and for someone who is not familiar with the term. Maybe you can just walk us through the different stages that we should understand when we look at plastic across that cycle.
Sure. So if we talk about the full life cycle of plastics, so it starts at the fossil fuel extraction. So that's we call a pre-manufacturing stage, and then that fossil fuel should be transferred, like maybe shipping, crude oil shipping to one country. So all the energy and like for the transportation we need gasoline. So then that kind of things are considered in the pre-manufacturing stage. Then that fossil fuel is converted to the monomers and then to the plastic polymers. And then that's a raw plastic, raw material. Then maybe it's transferred to another and manufacturing process starts. So maybe there are additives and then converted into a product or maybe semi-product. Then it can be transferred to another place. Then the complete product and then import, export kind of things or put into the market. So directly in the same country market or maybe exported and then put into the market. So then it will be in the market. So, and sometime in LCA we say cradle as the pre-manufacturing and cradle to gate. Gate means the market. So if we put it into the market, we say it's the gate stage. So what I explained is cradle to gate. And then the consumer or the customer go and purchase the product and then user phase. So it's using. And then it goes to after usage. So it may go to the end of life. So it can be go to the landfill or maybe litter, or it may be recycled, collection and recycle, chemical recycling or thermal recycling or material recycling. So those are the end of life. So maybe in some sort of end of life processes will give a re-life or maybe recycled material. So it enter into another product, or maybe it can be closed loop recycling. It means producing the same product. For example, PET bottle, PET bottle. So you can mechanically recycle or chemical recycle and create another PET bottle. So we call it closed loop. So recycling back into the same product. Or it can be using that PET bottle, we can make fabrics, certain kind of polyester or something. So then it's not a closed loop, so it's converting into another recycled material. So
when like just thinking about closed loop versus I guess open loop, is that the alternative? Okay, so open loop. How often is it a closed loop system, and how often is it an open loop system? Because if you turn your PET bottles into clothing, what happens to the clothing? Like, does the clothing also become recycled in the end?
That's very good question. So for the PET, so it's a kind of easiest plastic to recycle, collect, separate and recycle compared to other different types of plastics. So in that case, closed loop recycling is mostly practiced for PET bottles. But some countries, so they don't allow PET bottle recycling and using for food contact material as a food contact material, recycled material as a food contact material. So in that case, it's better. The option available is to recycle it into a different product. Of course, you're correct. So if it goes to the fabric or cloth is produced, and then we need to question whether it is sustainable or not unsustainable. For example, when you use it or when you wash it, so there can be certain microplastics releasing to the environment. But however, if we stop recycle PET usage in textile industry, then maybe we need to produce new plastic, new polyester using the virgin fossil fuels. So then it become virgin plastic. So then by using recycled plastic in certain kind of applications, we can reduce the usage of virgin plastic. So in that sense, sometime it can be useful. Even open loop systems can be useful to minimize the pollution.
So the solutions are complex, and it sounds really like that in some cases we can close the loop, and in other cases you have to. I think it's called maybe downcycling, or maybe you have upcycling as well. I'm not so sure, but it really depends on, as we learned from you, Amila, it depends on so many factors, like what product it is, where it's produced, by what technology, and what's the technological capacity in the sector in a country to do these things. So it's a complex matter.
Yeah, and also interestingly, even the other type of disciplines, like not only technological things, like the health related things. The European Union allows PET bottle recycling and use again as a food contacting material, but Sri Lanka, no, they don't allow. So they are not sure the quality of the recycled plastic to become again contacting with the food. So food means water or beverages in this case. So that's also bring some options, limit some options, not only the environmental aspects, the other aspects like policy measures kind of things are there.
Wow.
Wow, how complex is that, right? And I imagine, you have to, like, different industries probably will have to, in the end, for the circular economy, work together, right? Because, the beverage industry might have to work with the, I guess, garments industry in this context, right? To try to minimize their emissions as well, I guess, going forward.
Can I ask a question, Amila? I hope it doesn't go too far out on a tangent, but I'm wondering, like, and hopefully we may revisit this as we get further down the timeline towards when we can actually see this international legally binding instrument emerge. Because I'm wondering, if we look into the history of international governance, there are some examples of success that I'm sure you're familiar with and our listeners are familiar with as well. One example that's often highlighted is the replacement of chlorofluorocarbons, to address the ozone hole with the Montreal Protocol. It's often hailed as an example of success. And that was because the manufacturers of that material were few. So it was easy to get in touch with the manufacturers and talk to them and ask them if they were able to come up with an alternative. And in fact, I think there actually was an alternative in that case. So there was another gas that could be used that wasn't as harmful to the ozone layer. And so because there was already an alternative and because the sources were relatively few and well identified, it was possible to tackle. And so I'm wondering where we are in the example of plastics. I mean, is plastic created everywhere and we have no idea who creates it? Or can we, in fact, talk to the producers of plastic?
Are there some monopolies that we can just target?
That's very interesting topic. But anyway, just before going to the discussion, I would like to highlight one important point about INC1. So INC1 also recognized and discussed the importance of stakeholder participation during the negotiation and implementation. So that was one key point highlighted there. So okay. So now let's go to the question. So of course, like as I mentioned, there are thousands of chemicals and types of plastics, 10,000s, and there are like so much industries, like even the food industry. So can they survive without plastics? Like how impactful, and also not only food, in medical supplies. So so many plastic types involved. So I think it's not simple as that ozone, chlorofluorocarbon, CFC kind of case, my understanding. And also finding substitutes also quite challenge for some cases. And also, like if we consider full life cycle, and maybe in certain cases we may find alternative or substitute may be doing more harm. So such kind of things also are there. So that's why maybe various approaches. So the circular economy approach come to action. So how to minimize or how to engage the plastic again and again into and the collaboration of certain industries kind of things. And same time, I think the plastic industry also very much established and related to the crude oil, the industry as well. So it's a challenge, I believe, similar to climate issue, I believe. So
that as you mentioned before, that the importance of engaging stakeholders is well acknowledged in this process as well. We may imagine that that those that have a large stake in the plastics value chain also need to be engaged and probably also need to be part of the solution.
Yeah, exactly.
What you're sharing with us today really shows the importance of science and the importance of using different scientific approaches and to find the evidence that can help us make those difficult decisions as informed as they can be, because it really illustrates that there are so many complex interconnections and consequences that we have to take into account. And the life cycle assessment is one approach.
Yeah, of course, that's one approach. So of course there are many users, however it will not produce that the way we need. Okay, so there are certain uncertainties and certain things we need to work on to improve the quality of outputs. So the user should be very careful and should know the limitations, and the scientists who work on it should be able to communicate the limitations and how impactful. So there are of course limitations, but how sensitive to your results. Okay, so such kind of information should be precisely communicated to the stakeholders, and otherwise there can be wrong decisions.
Great, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to About Sustainability. Please subscribe at podcast.iges.jp or search for About Sustainability wherever you normally get your podcasts. If you've got feedback, you can review us on your podcast directory of choice or reach out on Twitter at IGES_EN. About Sustainability is produced by the Institute for Global Environmental Strategies. Any views expressed during the podcast are those of the speaker at the time of recording and do not necessarily reflect the views of IGES. Thank you for choosing to spend your time with us. We don't take that lightly, and we hope you'll join us next time.